Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Bachelder.
I'm Wendy Hembrock.
And I'm Brent Barrett.
And welcome to the second in our series of special podcasts covering Arcane podcasts and videos here. We are going to be, in this particular episode, covering the second set of three. So that'll be episodes 4 through 6, titled Happy Progress Day, Everyone Wants to Be My Enemy, and When These Walls Come Tumbling Down. Now, please be aware that anything and everything that might have happened in Season 1 is fair game for discussion. So if you have not seen all of Season 1 yet, then we'd either recommend you pause, come back, or realize, who knows, you might be spoiled. But while we may focus on the second set of episodes, we certainly talk about anything as it relates as things are playing out here in Season 1. For those who might not be aware, too, if you're jumping in because you're a big Arcane fan and just finding our videos or podcasts, please do feel free to check show notes. We do have a Discord channel where we talk about the podcasts and videos that we release here, covering genre shows. So by all means, we have a lot of fun in the community side of things.
Yeah, come join us.
We do have a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. So as we're doing a little bit of a format here on these Arcane discussions, let's start off kind of at first here with just some general thoughts about these episodes. And I know for me, on the rewatch side of it, especially this time, this set of episodes to me very much, for me, is the Vi and Caitlin story. And seeing a lot of the foundational things that are happening here, and some of the things they're going to mean in the next set. Not that there isn't plenty of other stuff, as they do a great job with all the other characters, but I think that's what kind of stood out for me in terms of the stuff that I had the most notes on, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about. How about you folks?
Yeah, it was definitely a jump forward for their characters, for sure. But also on the rewatch, I was a lot more interested in the Victor story across the 3 episodes as well. And also the Heimerdinger pieces that were kind of sprinkled throughout, because he's sort of our, theme guy, our Obi-Wan to the
Yoda
show. Yeah, well, I think of him more as Obi-Wan than Yoda. But they might be trying to make him look more like Yoda. So I recognized there was a lot more going on with those characters than maybe the first time I watched it, and I wasn't as focused on them.
Like you, Kevin, I didn't realize it until you just said that, but it does dawn on me when I look at my notes that these 3 episodes did focus a lot on relationships. Not only Vi and Caitlin and their building relationship, but you got Mel and Jace, and of course you've got the weird relationship between Jinx and Silco, which is weirdly kind of parental and also sexual in a weird way, because it's a really strange relationship. But yeah, a lot of that was happening. But the thing about these 3 episodes, too, is the whole time you get this building, when will they reunite? When will Vi and Powder, as she knows her, Jinx, meet? And we don't get that till the very end, but the whole time you're like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? So yeah, it's a relationship arc. I really didn't think of it that way, but you're right. There's a lot of fleshing out these characters and almost pairing them up in a way, and giving them people, because you talked about Victor, Wendy, but Victor, in a way, we saw at the beginning and the end, he's kind of, in a sense, he was Jace's partner, but he's really more now partnering with that weird geneticist guy that we saw in the flashbacks at the very end, coming back in and saying, I understand now. Yeah,
there's some splintering going on between some of the relationships from the first chapter, especially around Jace.
Yeah.
And also Jinx as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent way to put it, Brent, in terms of all the different relationships, pairings in many cases, and in terms of developments. Certainly, I see more, too, in these episodes about the whole council and kind of setting up the political side of it and what's going to play out there. Not that I didn't see it, first time around, but you see Mel doing a good job of kind of setting the board if you will, for Jace, the newbie here, and steering him and what's going to go there from the bigger picture arc. And then we get so much of the stuff that's going on with, as I said, Vi and Caitlin. And, got to give more credit, I think, than I might have in the first time around to Caitlin in terms of her ability to keep up with Vi, as far as just physicality of running through the Undercity and everything that's going on and being there to save her when Savika's just about ready to dust her off, which was kind of cool to see, and understanding her being a crack shot and all that goes there. And as you said, some of the Silco and Jinx stuff, yeah, that is just weird in so many ways, as we know, and just going to get weirder. But also powerful in terms of really seeing here, because it's our first chance to officially, if you will, see Jinx. That's certainly, as we kind of move and talk about some of our highlights from this set for me, when we kind of see her become Jinx here at the beginning of this set. And also many opportunities to see where her mental health is at, or not really at, right from the very beginning, seeing one of the firelights and thinking it might be Vi, and a couple of other times where she's seeing those things as her descent is starting big time here. But certainly that was a lot for me in terms of some of the highlights, very much is seeing a lot of that Jinx stuff, and certainly the reunion, albeit a little shorter than I might have liked, between Jinx and Vi.
And more violent.
Yes. Yes. So close to where they wanted, as we've talked about and will for every one of these discussions, so close at times to finally getting things back, shall we say, right, or in a good spot. And all it takes is Caitlin poking her head up there near the end when they're together, when it all goes back down.
Yeah, poor wording on that person who told Jinx that she's replaced you with an enforcer.
Yes.
Well, but she has. You were just talking about how well Caitlin could keep up with Vi getting back to the lanes, and that was something that Jinx Powder struggled with, right? She really wasn't up to the task, and Caitlin is much more her equal in that way. You were talking about the being replaced and the betrayal, and that is how Jinx Powder sees everything around her, because of that disconnect that happened when, from her perspective, Violet left her.
We know these are broken into groups of three episodes, and I'm struck by the similarity in the first three and the second three in the matter of timing when it comes to Vi and Jinx. And in the first one, of course, we have the end of the third episode where Vi is upset, understandably, and then decides to go back to her sister, but is stopped by Marcus and arrested, basically, and isn't able to go back to her sister. And then, of course, Jinx falls in, or Powder falls in with Silco. And this one, you get the whole baptism thing, where Silco's like, you're going to have to, Powder has to die, just like my innocent self died, and you're going to become only Jinx now. And we get that right before she has a reunification with her sister. And we also have like we talked about, the whole, referring to Caitlin as her replacement. Bad timing. If they had met prior to that baptism, whatever you want to call it, it might have gone differently. If she hadn't thought of Caitlin as a replacement and also killed off Powder finally, it might have gone differently.
It could have, but we also get a few different times in here when you see just how extreme Jinx is and what she's doing from Savika trying to, push her buttons and then totally stringing her up literally at one point. Silco getting so upset about when the whole, do you realize what you did? When she kills several of the enforcers and everything. Yeah. She's like, yeah, and I figured out what to do with this technology stuff. So it's the extremes of where Silco, you can tell, is just so angry and frustrated, and then like, oh my goodness, look what she did. And I also, in that baptism scene, it kind of gave me chills in a good way, just realizing all the ways they bring these episode sets together, along with him talking about the whole idea of having to let Powder die. This is also a point, as will happen in the very last episode of season 1, where he tells her that she is perfect. So, setting her up, trying to get her, to not be as fractured mentally. I mean, a couple of times when we see her in her little lair trying to work on her little bombs and everything else, and she's got all of that stuff around that's reminding her of what she did. And it's even more, heartbreaking, at least to me here at this point. I mean, it's just so dramatic near the end of the season 1, but here, seeing the foundation here, that how often it's just taking over her brain. It's just tough. It just, is something to watch her descent.
Well, also, her new identity is based on the idea that Violet is gone and never coming back. And so when she actually finds out that she's alive, that is another, trigger crack in this whole thing that she's constructed.
Yeah.
And there's nobody around her. Silco, to some extent, wants her to, stay whole. But you mentioned Savika. Savika is in a power struggle with her within their gang. So everyone around her is, positioned to be trying to undermine her. Really, only Silco is the one who isn't. And in some ways, he's doing it because he does know her, recognize her evil genius. And he's like, why am I doing this? That's the reason why. When he has that conversation with Vander about, this is a revolution, we're going to do absolutely anything that it takes. She's anything that it takes, meaning I have to tolerate all this other crazy that she brings, but she also might have the super weapon, or be the super weapon that he needs.
You talk about the crazy and the darkness. Both of you talked about that with Jinx, and there was one scene in particular in these 3 episodes that I even noted in my notes that really struck me as, oh, she's gone. She's really gone. Which is when she breaks back into their old hideout, where she sees the board, with the scores and everything. But you guys may not notice this, or maybe you are thinking, I don't know, but there's this one little moment where she breaks in and there's a noise and she turns and points her gun and it's a crow. And my thought was, oh, yeah, it's just a crow. And then she thinks about it for a second and she shoots it dead. I'm like, oh, you're gone. It's a crow. Why'd you kill it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And that whole scene, watching her crank up the machine and go at it.
Yeah.
And you can see all of that frustration that she's trying to vent and has some skill, but still score-wise, she ends up,
number 2.
Yeah. Yep. So it just pours even more in there on it to do that. So, yeah, that's so tough to do. And I also am struck very much in these episodes watching Silco. And again, we have some great conversations about do your air quotes here, the father figure that he becomes to Jinx, even though it's so weird and creepy in so many ways. But in these episodes, we with the shimmer and everything else, we just get reinforced. Not only will he do anything, which he thinks is, trying to get back to the level playing field with topsiders, but, as far as the people and what he'll do between getting them hooked on shimmer, having cornered Vi, he thought he was going to be able to do something to her until she and Caleb found a way to escape. And even when he goes to visit Marcus's daughter, talk about freaking the guy out. And the point was pretty well put across there. Dude, you better find a way to be of assistance to me, or I'm just going to take out your whole family. So we're just reminded of how truly he is the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he's one of those, ruthlessly committed to his vision. That's how he justifies his actions.
Ends justify the means.
Yeah,
he's like the definition of that.
I'm going to save you all by killing most of you along the way.
The Thanos approach, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to appreciate at this point now, 2/3 of the way through the season, what a good job they're doing with like we talked, a large cast, lots of moving parts in the different storylines. To their credit, and it's being reinforced for me in the rewatch, unlike some shows you watch where they have, multiple storylines, and there are ones where you're like, or at least I can be like sighing, looking at the clock going, okay, I don't care too much about this one. They're moving through them, good pacing. Things are occurring in those storylines that I care about. Characters, as they ebb and flow for my interest in some of them, there's things happening that I want to know more about. They're doing a good job. They really are, I think, of getting all of these set up for the big pieces that are going to fall in place in the last 3.
Kevin, you just mentioned that scene where Silco goes to Marcus's house and has the daughter playing the house of cards. And that was a great example for me how even characters I don't like, I'm very compelled by what's happening to them, because Marcus is a great example of a person who, he thinks initially he's working the system for his own benefit, but now he's getting squeezed by his choices, and he has less and less control over what's happening.
You both hit it. This show is doing at least these 3 episodes. The first 3 episodes, I think, had some bits where I was like, I don't really care about this. These 3, the pacing is so good, even though they covered topics that I'm not a big fan of, like the politics with the council. Don't care about that. But they got in and out so fast. They followed the JMS school of, get in as late as possible and leave as early as possible with a scene, to the point where I never got bored with it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, that's cool. Oh, shiny over here. They just keep moving. And I love that. And so they would talk about characters or things that weren't at the top of my list, but we were with them so briefly, and such important information was conveyed in those scenes that I found them engaging, and I didn't get bored at all, which is good.
We talked on our first episode, covering those first 3 episodes, a little bit about talking about maybe some of our favorite characters to that point in the story. I mean, I'm curious if, for you folks, now that we've shifted to the second set, have any of that changed for you?
Well, I mean, this is a character that the first time I watched it became more interesting as the story went along, which was Victor. I've always found Jace to be an interesting character, and he's even more interesting now because he's so clearly divided between the science, the possibility of the hex core, and trying to be validated within this council and by this woman that he's in love with. And you have Victor, who he's more of the scientist who, he's going down the Jekyll and Hyde kind of path in some ways. So for me, he's become a more compelling character. I was still very much interested in Caitlin and why she's doing what she's doing, because she's sort of, the truly good character in terms of she's not doing any of this for her own ego or to vindicate something or for vengeance. She's just straight up, she wanted to be a cop, so she became an enforcer. She is trying to do the right thing, as far as I can tell. So she's the most, pure character so far to me. So I'm still very intrigued by her. We'll talk about highlights, but I really liked when she went to go get help for Vi and the conversation she has with their friend who's been mutated. Those are pieces that I'm more intrigued with. But also Silco as a character, he's terrible, but he's a very compelling character.
Yeah, dark and compelling. I agree. I gave away my favorite character of the entire series last time when we talked about the first 3 episodes, and I said it was Caitlin. But the last 3, I think I picked maybe Vi or Vi and Jinx, Vi and Powder, sorry, at the time. But these three, I think my favorite of these three is Caitlin. It's back up to Caitlin just because of the interesting course her life has taken, her young interaction with Grayson, where pretty clearly Grayson let her win, but she got mad saying, "My parents pay you to let me win." But Grayson talking to her about being an enforcer and and basically setting her on her path, which I thought was great. But her relationship with Vi, I'll admit it right now, I ship Vi and Caitlin. They're my ship of the show. And her, like you said, keeping up with her, saving her, all of that stuff. Caitlin is it's saving her twice, the shooting and also getting the potion, and giving up her prize rifle to get the potion to save Vi. I just love Caitlin. She's great. But if I had to give a third, it would probably be Jinx as number 2, just because she's so crazy and so sad too. Her story is so sad, but she's also so crazy that it's just a compelling character. And then Vi, probably my third. But I'm Caitlin all the way, man. Caitlin all the way.
Yeah, and I know, as Wendy kind of pointed out, Victor is getting a lot more interesting here in this set of episodes, in the sense of, a little backstory, his, health condition. You can see him struggling with what he does or doesn't want to do when he's trying to, be the scientist with the altruistic approach of helping everyone, and now realizing he needs to help himself. Kind of very much can feel for that and what he's kind of doing there. I know it's very much the sister relationship of this whole season for me, certainly the Vi and Powder / Jinx, but near the end of the episode 6, when she lights the flare for her, and it's just about goes out just as she arrives. I mean, and you can see such a great job by the animators and the folks creating this. You can see Powder in her face when Vi is there and giving her a hug, and she's asking if she's real, thinking it might be another one of her visions / nightmares.
I had to go backwards, Kevin, because when I saw that this time through, I'm like, wait a minute, did they reanimate her to make her look younger like Powder? And I had to go back and look at it. No, they just the way they drew the older Jinx and the expression, you're right, you could see Powder in her face. It was amazing.
You could just see it. And then naturally when she sees Caitlin, it all changes. Everything changes. And again, because I like Caitlin, as you're both pointing out, I just feel bad that, what could have been if maybe she had shown up a little later or not at all, because then everything happens with the kidnapping and everything. So that's what certainly this season of this show did such a great job, was just feeling like they're so close to getting what's, or thinking what they're doing is right, and then having things go so horribly wrong. It's beautifully set up, and it's just making it even more entertaining and heartbreaking going into the final set now, knowing what's going to happen to some of them.
Yeah, you talked about the sister relationship, and the first time I watched season 1, that was kind of the main thing that I was tracking the whole time I was watching it, and I was definitely more sympathetic to Vi than to Powder. On the rewatch, I'm a little less sympathetic to Vi than I was the first time.
Is there any specific reason, if I may ask?
Well, I think one, because I'm just seeing many more characters in the story that are very interesting to me. So, because she's the older sister, partially, and even when she, it's not that I shouldn't say I'm less sympathetic to her, but she's less of the character I'm really pulling for the most. I was definitely pulling for her the most in season 1, and now I'm sort of like not pulling for her as the only character that I want to see good things happen to.
Another thing on the sister relationship that it struck me as you guys were talking, and when you were talking about the Caitlin showing up, maybe she should have showed up a little later, and then the kidnapping, when you said that, it struck me as I know it doesn't help the situation, but a glimmer of hope on the rewatch was that even after Jinx kind of erupted with seeing Caitlin, during the fight, she wasn't fighting her sister or Caitlin. And when Vi was knocked out and they were going to take her, she went to try to save her sister until they poofed out. So I thought that was a good sign, but we know, at least in season 1, not necessarily enough, but it was. I liked it. I saw that as a glimmer of hope.
Mm-hmm. I also didn't. I don't remember noticing the first time around too. In that whole chaos that happens there, at one point when Jinx is just firing at all of them, we cut to Vi's face, and you can almost see the look of horror in terms of what has Powder become. So that's also, I think, part of her kind of realizing it's not just a case of me being able to show up, give her a hug, and have everything be okay.
Yeah.
And that's going to play out even more in the next set of episodes. So.
Yeah, as a character, she's put in an impossible position by circumstance, right? She's kind of her mother as well as her sister, and she failed at it pretty badly, right? So she, wanted to include Powder in all of their little capers in the first act, the first chapter, but she didn't train her very well, and she also was kind of unwilling to admit that she wasn't as capable as she wanted her to be. She needed her to be, and now she's failed because she got carted off to jail at the end of chapter 3, episode 3, and now she sees, look what happened to her. If I had been here, just look what happened to her because I wasn't here for her. So it'll be interesting for me to see how much of that guilt really continues to play out in her, because I don't remember that from the first watch around that. I'll be paying a little more attention to that in the next 3 to see if she gives us more glimmers into that.
Can I just point out how amazing taking over for a character that's grown up Ella Purnell did, voicing Jinx, the vocal performance of Jinx. She just conveyed that crazy, broken, sad, twisted, just so well. She did a great job.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And another one I appreciated too as part of this is obviously until Vi has her showdown with Savika, up to this point, she's just assumed that Silco has kidnapped Powder, and they're holding her, and she's got to go save her. She's got to swoop in and be the hero. So to have Savika basically break the news that, oh no, she's
like her daughter.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
/ girlfriend.
Oh man, talk about a gut punch. Metaphorically, while Savika's beating the crap out of her physically too. I mean, that was just some rough stuff to go through. So, I'm going to see a good part of that play out in the next set too. Can't wait to be rewatching and talking about it.
Yeah, the truth hurts is literal in this show.
I find it interesting on the whole Vi trying to find her though. The madam of the house of ill repute probably knew very well that Powder became Jinx. But when Vi asked her, do you know anything about Powder? What happened to Powder? She's like, I don't know. She didn't want to, maybe she didn't want to hurt Vi or whatever, but she didn't come out. She wasn't happy to say it. But then Savika's like, oh, you don't have to beat me at all to get the answer to that question. And just gave her the answer.
Yeah. I think she didn't want to be the one to break the bad news to her.
Basically, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff all around, though.
Well, considering what happens to the messengers in Arcane, you don't really want to be them.
Yeah, true. No. I don't think she was afraid that Vi would beat her up, though. I think she just literally cared for her a little bit. And
or heartache, the heartache side. I don't want to be the one that breaks. Yeah. Well, and we finish off the end of that episode 6 with, Jinx just standing there all alone. So, as she often feels she is.
So we did favorite characters. Kevin, are we going to do highlights? I'm waiting.
Oh, go. We kind of rolled into it in conversation, but I was just about to say, does anyone want to kind of get up on a soapbox and talk about something specific?
I just want to talk about highlights, but I'll go in order if you want to start.
No, go. No, you are motivated. You go, sir.
I'll give a highlight. Let's go around circle. I've got like 5 of them marked down. I guess my number one highlight, and I kind of hinted at it before, and it's kind of cheaty for me to say it as a highlight because I've already talked about it, but the building relationship/romance between Vi and Caitlin. But there are a couple of specific points. The point where Vi, they're in that I'll use the word whorehouse, sorry, whatever you want to call it. And Vi is telling Caitlin, hey, you use what you got. You're hot. People will give you information. And then, coming back and seeing her mingling with people and being totally at ease with a woman customer, a female customer. But then Caitlin, obviously we talked about it, saving Vi with the shot and saving her with the potion. Those and everything else, just that building of that relationship that pays off later. And according to the season 2 trailers, there's even more of it. But that's my number one highlight. So I'll see what Wendy's got, or you've got, Kevin, whoever.
It should be.
Emotionally for me, it was very much the lighting of the flare and that whole scene paying out, especially the first time around, because I had that hope that the sisters were going to, have a wonderful reunion. And then the emotional gut punch to me as the viewer, when it, as most other things in the series go, oh, so close, but not to be. That was, emotionally for me, probably the point in these episodes that really stuck out the most. I mean, it's all, as happens throughout the whole season, is going to be a lot of the Jinx, Powder, and Vi stuff as main highlights. And just appreciating, too, in terms of some other highlights, again, just being reinforced with how much Silco will do anything, how singular focused he is, and how conflicted he's going to be in the next set. It just makes me appreciate some of his character arc, because he knows how he'll go to any length to try to work towards what he sees as the way to get them to get the respect they need, and not caring, and then he's going to start to care. So I guess some of that father side of it, however twisted, is going to be very fascinating to watch coming up.
That definitely the flare and that whole build up to that scene, that was a highlight for me as well. So I'm going to take the Victor, it's kind of the flashback and the mutation and the weird guy who he then goes back to. And it turns out, he wasn't trying to save this poor little animal. He was really trying to exploit the mutation because he's, basically tortured it to keep it alive in order to study it, harvest it. But I really liked the whole piece of Victor trying to advocate for himself to find a cure for what's happening, to trying to resolve his own decisions because he's facing his own mortality. He has to talk with Heimerdinger about, or the woman the assistant who's crushing on him about whether you were important or not, or you made a legacy, and he's kind of contrasting himself probably with Jace when he's judging, I haven't done anything, when he's really been the linchpin to all of the breakthroughs that they've had with this thing. But he's going to be, consumed, destroyed by it. So his arc is very tragic. So I'd say that would be another highlight for me, besides the ones you guys both mentioned.
Going on to my next one, there's some great fights in this, but I think the Vi Savika fight is, to my mind, the highlight, because Vi is like, I know you, you betrayed my father, essentially, and she goes in just physically fighting her, and then all of a sudden we reveal Savika's got this super powered arm, and at first Vi is getting the crap beat out of her, but then turns it around. It's just a great fight, choreographed, outcome. The tension, I love that whole fight sequence.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. And again, great way at the end to have Caitlin show her value in saving her. Because it's kind of understated, although we've talked quite a bit about it, and Brent's done a great job talking about how much he enjoys their relationship, that, the character growth for Caitlin really is, I appreciate it even more. This rewatch was still more to come in the next set of episodes, but you really do see a lot of it here, because, I mean, she was kind of that meek, character, privileged and all, not realizing how dedicated she was and trying to figure out what's going on. So, you appreciate them trying to do it the right way and show that she deserves the chance to be in a better position for it. And that's another way to have a character to root for while you're watching some of these other characters that are just going to come to bad endings or end up in a bad spot. So it's some good stuff there too.
Yeah, just building on Caitlin, I mentioned earlier when she goes to find help for Vi, and she finds the friend of theirs who's been mutated, and he's like, why don't you come with me? And he's like, no, I don't want her to see me like this. She was very compassionate to a total stranger who was helping her out, and it just showed a lot about her character that I really appreciated. But the other highlight I wanted to mention was the thing that they do with Jinx, which is they make her very funny when she's about to do something really mean or crazy. And like when she goes, Savika's told her some information, but she's not sure she believes it yet. And she goes to the bar and she's talking to the bartender and she's calling him Chuck, but that's not his name. And she's talking about, you're doing a great job, Chuck, but why wasn't I invited to this party? And whoever's writing that dialogue is just doing a great job, because it's very clever. It makes her much more than just the unhinged character. It shows her that she has a very high intelligence. It's just not always connecting with everyone else around her easily.
And she literally gives him a pat on the back of the paint bomb exploding on his back.
Yeah.
It's great.
Can't resist.
Another pardon me. Another highlight for me is I could pick another fight because I think it's a great fight, but I think I'm going to pick the premiere of Jinx. The beginning of the first episode, where those I forgot their name, but those thugs go down into the hold, the cargo hold, and all of a sudden they notice the Jinx, graffiti, and she's basically like, "Hi," and she just destroys them. I just love that appearance. The first time we see her, that's a highlight for me. Is just the premiere of Jinx.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she is so adept at being able to plant those things on folks, and her ability to move around. I was also, call it a highlight, but just reinforcing the journey of their character. On multiple occasions here, she does come clean with Silco, talking about that she's having these visions and seeing these things. If you will, flashbacks, or can't get it out of her head what she's done or did to her friends in the past. So, she's trying to reach out, and he, just being who he is basically just trying to spin that information to help her stay her crazy self that still is able to do some things. So, it's another example of feeling for me for the character, in that she's not just, like we've talked about sometimes, just totally going crazy and not even attempting to come back or attempting to figure out why. But she's, anyway, we maybe use the word stuck with him as that parental figure, and he's not going to have any of it. He's going to keep trying to spin her to be his weapon.
Well, I do think he cares about her. We saw that in episode 3 when, he's about to knife her, and instead he embraces her, and he's like, "Oh." So there's a real emotional connection there to me. And even when Brent had mentioned before, and it was definitely something I wanted to talk about as a highlight, was that whole betrayal pep talk that he gives her before drowning in the disgusting river to be reborn. That, it's fear of pain you need to overcome. And he's sharing what he thinks is wisdom from his own lived experience to help her get through her struggles. He certainly recognizes the value of being able to manipulate people through their bond to him, but I think he does actually feel something for her as well.
Yeah. It's a weird relationship.
And for me, I don't sense as much in this set that feeling for her as still trying to manipulate her for his means. Maybe he started to have some of those, but I think we see a lot more of that in the last set of episodes when he truly does start to experience some of that. There are maybe, as you pointed out, Wendy, a couple of spots there, but I still saw him as just totally trying to, since she's been the one trying to tell him that I'm still, I thought I saw Vi a couple of times. I'm seeing the dead people, basically, that I killed. And he's starting to talk about how you've got to, let Powder die. And, so I don't know. I'm not seeing as much of it myself at this point, but we do know we're going to get even more of it before the end of the season.
I have another highlight.
I was about to say, anyone have any
it's not
unnamed highlight we have to get out?
It's not a story highlight. It's an episode highlight. I thought it was just really super cool when Imagine Dragons were performing as themselves in that bar or wherever they were. And it's really cool. If you haven't gone to their YouTube channel, you can find a full-length version of that in the Arcane animation style with Arcane scenes and characters of that song, of them performing it. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yep.
The other, I'll call it a highlight. It was something I noticed more on the rewatch was actually when, just before Jace gets Heimerdinger thrown off of the council, he comes to their lab to see what they're doing, and I realized he had a flashback or a vision of another time when everything was destroyed. And he's recognizing, he's like, it was one seed from this thing that destroyed our whole world, and you need to listen to me. And the first time you watch it, you could just interpret that him as being very, rigid and by the book. You need to stop because he's not involved in what they're doing. But on the rewatch, it was the true alarm he had for what was happening, and it wasn't just so much the elder saying slow down. He was like, oh no, what have you done? And then he looks at Victor and says, you've changed. What did it do to you? And I definitely didn't notice that as much on the first watch. So I'll be very curious to see what happens with Heimerdinger, which I didn't pay very much attention to him as a character, because I really did think of him as sort of as the prop of, well, he's the old guard and we're going to sweep him aside, but whether or not he'll be able to have any influence going forward.
Yeah, knowing who he connects with in the last set of episodes and what that can mean in season 2 is going to be very interesting to see. Yeah,
and it's just been long enough that I don't remember, so it'll be like watching it for the first time again on the rewatch.
And we will certainly talk about it in the last set, but I mean, as some of you folks well know, I mean, I went down the rabbit hole in a big way for this show once, my first time after watching it, and watched so many reactors and so many videos about that last episode. So it's going to be interesting just talking it through with the two of you kind of a little bit based on some of that and what it's going to mean when we get season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Very soon.
Soon.
Any other thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Not for me.
Just one, and it's related to the Heimerdinger storyline, because when Victor and Jace are showing him the lab, they're saying, what if these ruins can think and adapt and evolve? And the show is so much about these two sisters and this class struggle that's going on that it's sort of like, yo, Pandora's box over here, you opened it, and you're not paying attention to the existential threat that's coming.
Right.
Winter is coming. So that'll be something that I'm also going to pay more attention to in terms of how we're building to that, and especially going into season 2. Are we going to get more magicians from other places, because we have these portals that people can come through now? What's going to happen with the lab, especially depending on what happens to Victor? How soon does he die, or transform into something else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to start to have a long list of questions about what happens to who. Good stuff. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap our discussion here for episodes 4 to 6. Look for our final set of the 3 to talk about the episode 7 to 9, leading into the season 2 premiere coming up here on November the 9th. So lots of fun talking about Arcane. Appreciate Wendy and Brent being here, and all of you for listening to the audio or watching us on YouTube. We do appreciate it. And we hope you'll all take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Catch you next time.